Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is yet another Sunday that we come to you from your favorite Sunday evening show, the FiresideKE, where we bring you politics, polity, and policy. There has been a lot that has gone on throughout the week, and I'm happy to be joined by a team of very solid gentlemen. Dismas appearing in a new look, and I want to believe that it's also heavy look on what we are about to discuss. There are a number of things that have happened, but we want to look at three key things and just have a discussion around them. One, we want to look at the Kenya Kwanza regime, specifically UDA, and what is happening. Is it a question of divorce coming too early, or just a question of a few individuals rocking the boat from within? We also want to look at the court appearance of the Inspector General of Police and the drama between the police force and the Judiciary. So the Chief Justice come out strongly, and the drama still unfolds. And lastly, we want to look at the job saga, the jobs in Germany. Is it a new dawn or just hot air? Joining me today is Dismas Mokua. We also have Leonard Khafafa, the aviation expert who was with us last week. There's a lot that we can still discuss and tap on his expertise. And finally, because there's a lot of legal heavy lifting, we have Fanya, mambo, Kinuthia. Yes.
Is it Fanya mambo or Finya mambo?
Fanya mambo Kinuthia, who is an advocate and advocate of the High Court. And let me start with you, Wakili. When we look at this drama in Kenya Kwanza, the regime, we have the president who has probably just gone quiet. I think after the Gen Z revolution, broad-based government is back to default setting, going about his business as usual. But then we have a deputy president who seems to be having a lot of issues. And the people who are talking to him appear to be very junior individuals in the ranking of the regime. But it seems like there's a lot going on. What is your take on all this?
First and foremost, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. I don't like fighting with the Law Society of Kenya, so I have always made it clear I'm a lawyer. I'm a court-accredited mediator. I'm an arbitrator. Okay. I am not a member of the Law Society of Kenya. I'm not an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, so that I don't want the Law Society of Kenya coming for my neck. But having said that, you see, the president is touring the world, and his deputy is touring the ground. He's somewhere in Haiti. His deputy is somewhere within Mount Kenya. I think everything for him comes from within Mount Kenya, and he's happy to do everything within Mount Kenya. UDA is in a very special place, I must say, and we are happy about the special place they are in. I saw what happened at Bomas of Kenya. You bring young people, you put them in UDA colors, you put them in a hall, you brand the hall, and you literally tell them this is a UDA function. And then they start singing Yote Yawezekana Bila Ruto. That was a good and fantastic end for the week, because people are telling you, we will take whatever it is you want to give us. If it's money, we will be happy to celebrate and munch on your money. But after we are done, we are reminding you that I wish 2027 was tomorrow. This government would go home.
But one thing that many critics say is that we've been in this space before, but Kenyans are very quick to forget. Wakili here is talking about many people saying, I wish elections were tomorrow. We'll do everything that this regime wants, but not vote for them. Do you think that's the case?
Absolutely not. Because unfortunately for Wakili, it comes from a point of theory and from a populist
place. Wakili is moving mountains in Dagoretti North here. Is it south? North or south?
South.
Dagoretti South. You go to Dagoretti South and Wakili is a big name,
I'm not sure whether you have mountains.
So that theory thing may not suffice.
Okay, yes. Let me go to the point.
Yes.
Let's look at it from a global perspective. Article 147 defines the role of the deputy president, and in a nutshell, it says you're supposed to align your interests to the president. That the president of the day runs the show. If you do anything outside that, you're going to be in trouble. And we can cite a million examples. For instance, in the US today, the Democratic candidate for the presidency is Kamala Harris. In my village, we say Kamala. But Kamala played very cool. Even when people say that Joe Biden's debate performance was horrible, she came out and said, wait a minute, that was a good show. And eventually Joe Biden said, this lady can actually be our presidential candidate. Now she's running the show. Even Joe Biden, when he was the vice president, he did not attempt to rock the boat when Obama, the Kenyan American gentleman, was the president of the US. He played cool. Now, if you go to Nigeria, a fella called Atiku Abubakar attempted to rock the boat, and President Obasanjo told him, you're not going to be president of Nigeria. And Abubakar has been running, I think he's running for the 7th time to become a president. He's not succeeded. However, in Kenya, we've got a different scenario.
Yeah.
That for President William Samoei Ruto, he was humiliated for about 9 years, but he came out during the last year to say that he's campaigning for presidency, and he made it. So in my view, what the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya has failed to do is actually to socialize with Article 147 and understand the role of the Deputy President. And because you've got security of tenure for the Deputy President, is confused security of tenure for a co-president. Because a few days ago he was complaining that he never gets invited for a number of high-level critical meetings, saying that he should attend all meetings. But you only attend all those critical meetings if you are a co-president. But when there's a president, you attend meetings at his pleasure or when you've been assigned specific responsibilities. So in my view, the Deputy President needs to come down and ask himself, what is actually the role of a Deputy President in the Republic of Kenya? And if he thinks that there are some junior officers who are humiliating him, then he's got two options. He can resign today and kiss politics by, or he can resign today and then go and harmonize and build his political capital for 2027. The interview he did, which has raised a lot of concern within Nairobi, he spoke about everything apart from what he's supposed to do. You remember via an order given by the president, he's responsible for tea, coffee, and milk. One expected for him to actually deliver a scorecard, because those are issues which affect all farmers in Kenya. People in Kisii have got a lot of tea, a lot of coffee, and a lot of milk, and they were looking forward to very fundamental reforms. He has not delivered on that. So somebody can easily come to the conclusion that what the Deputy President is doing, he wants to nationalize his personal agenda. In other words, he wants Kenyans to be shareholders.
Personal agenda or personal tribulations?
Yeah, he wants us to be. You remember he told us that this administration is made up of some shareholders. Yeah. He is now inviting Kenyans, including Mura, who earlier on was not being considered as a shareholder, now to become a shareholder in his personal tribulations, which I find to be unacceptable.
But to be fair on the Deputy President, Dismas, he has never come out or portrayed himself as a co-president. As a matter of fact, he has always been the diligent deputy, singing praise to the president, telling the president, these people love you, until the recent past that we've seen the altercation between him and a few big names within UDA.
Professor.
And credit to the president has remained presidential.
Professor.
So I at no point have I seen the deputy president acting as a co-president.
In accounting, there's a concept they call substance over form.
Yeah.
He may have not said that he's a co-president, but he wanted to be treated as a co-president, and he behaved in a same manner. The president is a symbol of national unity. So when you are the deputy president, and every time when you're opening your mouth, every conversation is aligned to Mount Kenya. So what happens to Wafula? What happens to Mura? What happens to Alima from Coast? Because you're a deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. You're not a deputy president for Mount Kenya. Because every time you're talking about shareholding, that for you to get a position, you must be a shareholder. A president is a symbol of national unity, and is both indicated after the election that while I'm a Kenya Kwanza candidate, I'm going to serve the entire nation. But for the deputy president, every single day he opens his mouth, he's saying, Kwamba, don't touch the mountain, don't touch the mountain. So how does that make Kenyans feel? Even after the formation of a broad-based government, is on record as having said that wengine walipata viti yao, but for us in Mount Kenya, we were not affected. So you begin to wonder, is he really a symbol of national unity? I would actually venture and say that if he thinks he's secured sufficient political capital today, he abandons the security of Kenya and he presents his resignation tomorrow morning.
Now, I think I totally agree with you that to a large extent, he has not covered himself in glory as a symbol of national unity. He's propagated a lot of Mount Kenya issues. But isn't that the nature of our politics? For instance, when President William Ruto was looking for a running mate, he was essentially looking for someone who was going to bring votes. And to come with votes comes some sort of a clout and interests in terms of representing the people who are giving you that votes. And someone would argue that because the deputy president became a deputy president, courtesy of the votes that he was bringing, and he keeps reminding everyone, he brought 47% of what won President William Ruto.
Did he actually bring the votes?
That's the question. Yes. Because I think Leonard has a very panoramic view of...
I disagree that the deputy president brought all the votes, all the Mount Kenya votes. You will remember that President William Ruto, while he was deputy then, engaged in what was derided as early campaigns. And he hit the ground running. Actually, from 2018, he hit the ground running in preparation for 2022, to the extent that he was called Tanga Tanga. That's where the tag came from, because he said his early campaigns, and he made his inroads into central Kenya. And what people forget is that central Kenya, whereas they coalesce under this banner called the mountain, they are not so much tribal as issue-driven. And the deputy president then, William Ruto, when he was deputy president then, latched on the issues that informed the disgruntlement of the central Kenya, of Mount Kenya, with the then president, who was Uhuru. And these were issues to do with milk, these were issues to do with coffee, issues to do with tea, issues to do with the trade, because quite a number of central Kenyans are traders. And there was this whole policy of consolidating containers, and there was this whole policy that affected them, which was basically about consolidation of containers that had been withheld at ICD, I believe, and that had affected their trading. So those were issues that were really dear to the hearts of central Kenya voters, and that the president identified pretty early and articulated those concerns. I mean, he was able to communicate to the voters at the grassroots and to take in their concerns and to promise them that he would sort them out come the elections of 2022. So even before we got to know of a character called Rigathi Gachagua, William Ruto already had the hearts and the minds of central Kenya on account of issue-driven politics. So
Hate-driven politics.
Issue-driven politics. So it is not. But it was factual. It was factual. I mean, milk was basically basically monopolized by one family. Coffee was in disarray. I mean, tea. Those are issues. Whether they stir up hatred or not, those are issues, and those are issues that are dear to central Kenya voters. So by 2021, 2022, the current president, then as deputy, had the Mount Kenya vote lock, stock, and barrel. He could have picked any figure from the mountain, and still got more or less the same number of votes that he got because of the campaign that he did. Yeah.
I totally agree with you to the extent that the current president actually outdid himself in reaching out to the Mount Kenya region. Whether it was issue-driven or not, probably is debatable. But I strongly believe that the choices that both Raila Odinga and William Ruto went with in 2022 were actually choices that were based on not really the number of votes that were going to come in, but stopping the number of votes that were going to go away. So to say that President William Ruto had everything lock, stock, and barrel, to me is probably to miss the point. Because if you did have Rigathi Gachagua, It is not what Rigathi Gachagua was bringing in. It is what Rigathi Gachagua was going to disappear with.
I guess
and I think the same thing with Raila Odinga. Martha Karua was not necessarily going to bring a lot, and she didn't really bring a lot. But you see, that reform ideology that Raila had come up with the Azimio La Umoja was going to be dented. Why not? Why to go with any other person apart from Martha Karua? But let me come to Akili, because I tend to identify with what you're saying. A lot of what Tanga, leveraged was basically hateful and hurtful messages. And it seems like the champion of propagating, those hateful and hurtful messages is now suffering the same brand of what he calls President Uhuru Kenyatta. Do you think, in your opinion, his goose is already cooked? Listening to him over the weekend, he seems to be speaking like a man who has been pushed to the wall and now is probably threatening the president with things that for so many people are neither here nor there.
Actually, today, this morning has issued threats.
Yeah. We had a government formed on nothing other than hatred for Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. And that's the only thing they preached within Mount Kenya. And they made the people of Mount Kenya think that Uhuru is the worst thing that ever happened to them. They come and tell you that Uhuru has monopolized milk. Then they are asked, okay, who stopped you? Did you ever try opening a milk company in Mount Kenya or anywhere in the country and you were told no? Have you tried buying milk at a higher price from the people of Mount Kenya and they have said they will not supply to you? No. So you're here complaining that I have a company that buys milk, but then you're not creating yours that can buy milk, and you have not come with any other better offer, and you're telling people that you're going to do things. I think things have even gotten worse right now. Riggy, unfortunately, has to be a deputy president, but look at what the people from the mountain are telling him. When we are sent away from Marikiti, the highest ranking government officer we can relate to is you. So now he's torn between, first and foremost, being a deputy president for the whole Republic of Kenya and becoming that, because let me tell you how Kenyans behave. If I am from Western and I have a problem that requires a politician, I start asking which politician from Western is the senior most ranking and how can I reach him to sort out my problem. Then if you're from Nyanza, the same, and from every other part of the country. So what the people of Mount Kenya are doing is saying that the closest to power or the most powerful we have is the deputy president. So we have to reach out to him when we are being kicked out of Marikiti. And every time he comes to listen to them, they are happy. But then the rest of the country says, wait a minute, you're not a Mount Kenya deputy president, you're a deputy president for the whole Republic of Kenya. I am extremely happy that they are fighting. We had saved up some energy to fight this UDA administration. And that energy would have been really spent on a government that has got a lot of resources. Now, what they have done is that they have started fighting within themselves and weakening themselves for us to finish them at the end there. So we are happy. In fact, right now, I've saved my arsenal, all my energy that was to be used to continue pushing this administration. Let them first fight within themselves and weaken themselves. I mean, if you are an army today and you wake up and you find that within the courts of your enemies, they are fighting, why do you want to go in then? Wait for them to weaken. Each of them will be weaker, then come in. So we are happy that they are fighting. We pray for more fights. In fact, I think I need to do a novena for them so that they can fight so hard and increase the number of troops on each side and knock each other so hard so that by the time we are coming to deal with them in 2027, they've already been weakened by internal fights. So this is a very good answered prayer on a Sunday, and we continue to encourage them to higher gears.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
As a former altar boy, I have to come in and give you some theological classes. The Lord responds only to noble prayers, not prayers around fights, breaking the...
This is a noble prayer. That people who are ripping this country apart fight one another and finish one. It's a very noble play. When you find someone who is certain things, they can be allowed to sell the airport.
I'm not an altar boy, but I think I was very prominent in chapel in high school. And if I leave that aside, there is Kenya.
Yes.
And as a patriotic citizen,
yes,
there is a sense in which we gave this regime, whether legitimate or illegitimately, power for the next 5 years.
Yes.
So if they keep fighting, don't you think it is Kenyans who will suffer? And in your own opinion, don't you think there is a way in which they can keep their fights out and focus on delivering on their promises?
Let me tell you, When they are not fighting, they are selling the airport. They are doing shift. They are doing a funny university funding model. When they are not fighting, they have the energy.
The damage is
very horrible things. I am happy when they are fighting.
Let me interject.
When they are not fighting, when they are not fighting, every other scheme they are making is a horrible one. When they are not fighting, every other plan they are making is a catastrophe. So I pray that they keep fighting, because then they are not stealing from Kenyans through shift. Right now, by the way, pray to God you don't get sick, because you have a useless NHIF card that cannot pay anything for you, and Kenyans are complaining all over.
Yeah, but
let us pray for them to fight.
Dismas can hold his breath.
Yes.
Is it a fight? When there's a fight, I presuppose that there are two parties exchanging fisticuffs.
Leonard,
Is it a fight when one party is throwing punches?
The deputy president.
Professor, you don't want to give him time to.
I'm giving them, but I just want you to understand that there is a sense in which it is a real
You
fight.
want to influence his thinking.
It's not a fight when one party is hurling punches that don't even reach the target. Yeah, and the other party just looks at him and moves on without any response. If it were a real fight, in boxing, I think I know a little bit about boxing. I think there are different categories. I think there's featherweight, there's heavyweight. So you have this heavyweight
lightweight,
trying to exchange fisticuffs with a lightweight. Who is Kimani Ichung'wah in the scheme of things? Why does the deputy president deign himself to respond to the likes of Kimani Ichung'wah? Yeah. Why does he have this quote-unquote inferiority complex that makes him feel he's been slighted? Yeah.
He's looking at the owner of what has been sent to him.
No, why doesn't he address the owner? If he's man enough, let him address the owner of the dog. Let him not fight the dog. Let him not kick the dog.
Actually, let me buttress. There's this one politician in Kenya who's been engaged in catfights or altercations with every single elected leader, starting from the MCA, then you come to the MP, then you come to the senator, to the governor. Wherever he goes, he rubs people the wrong way. And I'd like to agree with Leonard that actually there is no fight. It's maybe shadow boxing.
It is self-immolation, by the way. You set yourself alight and then you...
Let me address a fundamental issue. He had an interview at the end of the week, and he said he does not know what happens in this administration. So as far as he's concerned, he says he's like a Pontius Pilate. He has no idea. But in an executive order, is the one who chairs all cabinet subcommittee meetings. And those committee meetings essentially is the cabinet, but without the president. That is like a clearinghouse. They agree on everything before going to the cabinet. So why is he misleading Kenyans that he doesn't know?
He's just telling us what his boss told everybody. His boss did exactly what he's doing, and he said exactly what he's saying.
I think the DP has an inflated sense of self, which is why he's committed some faux pas. You remember when the Gen Zs went on ravage and the president addressed the nation?
Yeah.
Protocol dictates that it's the president who has the last word on anything.
Yeah.
He speaks and the nation listens, and that's as far as it goes. Why then did the deputy president take it upon himself to speak after the president? And not only to speak after the president, but to insinuate that the president was not in charge, was not in control.
And actually
to cast aspersions on the ability of the president to harness intelligence, national intelligence, and to act on proper national intelligence. What kind of conduct was that? That was conduct unbecoming of the deputy president. Perhaps he doesn't understand his role. As Dismas has said, perhaps he does not understand his role as deputy president. And that is why he's now hurling brickbats, imagining that he's been slighted.
A lawyer who can give you a quick seminar on Article 147 and what is expected of a deputy president. When you're a deputy president, Kenya's got a very good case study. President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, for 24 years, he remained calm. There's a concept they call in applied politics.
The constitutional dispensation back there.
There's something that Dismas is forgetting. You've realized that as a lawyer, I don't quote that constitution. Because this government literally suspended that constitution. They abduct people left, right, and center. They disobey court orders. Their police or IG disobeys court orders. When did this government last follow the constitution? Look at the appointments. They were giving us someone who is not even qualified, who doesn't understand what GDP is, to become an ambassador. Article 6 doesn't make sense. I would be happy to talk about constitutionalism in a government that follows the constitution. But in a government that abducts people left, right, and center, a government that does not send its IG when they are summoned to court, a government that withdraws security of a judge who has pronounced himself on a matter that is low. Why are we talking about the constitution to them? A government that is now appointing an IG who is past the age of 61 and all civil servants.
I think they're jumping the gun.
The truth is, let's not have a constitutional conversation about a government that does not respect the constitution. If we want to have a constitutional conversation, we shall open it, we know it in our heads. I'm doing my master's in constitutional law, democracy and governance at the University of Nairobi, and I cannot begin to speak constitutionalism where UDA is concerned. Where UDA is concerned, you look for another set of law called Bush law.
Yes.
And then you have a conversation around Bush law, because even the deputy president is not following the law. They are following Bush law.
And
the president himself is not following the law. And that is why we cannot begin to start citing our constitution when we have this government in place.
I disagree.
And we don't have IBC right now.
Wakili,
We don't care.
Wakili,
Yeah.
we are coming back to the issue of the Inspector General of Police. Now that you're saying that we should not have a constitutional discussion, let us have this jungle discussion.
Yes, that's
The
where we are.
in the constitution, there is a provision for impeaching the deputy president, for a silent provision for getting another deputy president in office, but the deputy president is outside here, speaking as though an impeachment is impending.
No, he's going to be
Yes,
impeached.
and he's saying,
For sure he will
and
be.
he's saying that the consequences of his impeachment are going to be dire on the president.
Yes.
From where you sit, if we go that direction, what does the politics say? You're from Mount Kenya region.
Actually, the truth is this. President Ruto, even if you did nothing, even if you just did nothing, he's automatically a one-term president. And even deep down in his heart, he knows. And if there's anybody who has got that sheer imagination that some miracle will happen in 2027 and he will get another term, please wake up from your dream.
Maybe
Every Kenyan.
Maybe the other guys will be asking you, where are the indicators and the pathways for the president
I'll tell
not
you the
making it in 2027?
I'll tell you the indicators.
Yes.
We are trying to mention one toilet that has been built in this government regime, like one, a toilet, a bathroom, something. The way you would say there is this road. One thing that they have started from inception and finished.
I mean, the guys who are getting into
other than
houses,
selling our airport and planning to sell KICC and cheap.
I think
and all
let's
these other
not
things.
finish.
Yeah?
We will come back.
All
Yeah.
these other horrendous things.
Yes.
My friend, I haven't come across one thing. This is a government that has borrowed 4.6 trillion. Do you know what 4.6 trillion is? And they have nothing to show for it. So let's not have a conversation about a government that is going home. It's just a way that we just can't turn our calendar quickly and get to 2027 and take them home. But the truth is, there is nothing to show for it. And don't talk about constitutionalism and UDA in the same sentence. When you want to talk about them, talk about
Deputy
jungle law.
president, impeachment,
It's
political
happening.
consequences.
Political consequences, very simple.
Yeah.
You see, there's this imagination that he carries the mountain with him. He doesn't. Does he have sympathizers? Yes, he does. The few you see here and there. But Kenyans have not forgotten what this administration has done to them in 2 years. And we are not going to separate the deputy president from the president. So the political implications are good for all of them. We are draining the swamp. I think this is one message that has not gotten to Kenyans. We are draining the swamp. And I thank God that a few people from ODM have joined them.
So the
now
swamp
it is
is
very
bigger.
easy. It's very easy to drain the whole swamp.
I like the sound of what you're saying.
Let's stop this imagination
Yeah.
that it is possible to separate the deputy president from the president. From where we sit as Mount Kenya, we are sympathizing with him and cheering him on. But we are draining the swamp.
Good stuff. Leonard.
so many issues. I mean, I'm actually a little confused. I don't know
You
where to
want an
start.
energy drink?
No. I just need to figure out where to respond because our Kili here is banding a lot of half-truths. First of all, let's talk figures. 4.6 trillion borrowed in the last 2 years.
Yes.
Our national debt is 10 trillion. At the point Uhuru Kenyatta was living, it was 9 point something trillion. Yes, it was 9. Look at the debt. The debt register is there. Where look at the budget, and you can't borrow without parliament. Parliament
But
is,
to be
you can't,
fair, it has happened. It has happened in the past.
Give me.
Yes.
You can't borrow without Parliament. It's always in the budget. The budget deficit for 2022-2023 was 900 billion shillings. The budget deficit for this financial year, initially it was had the finance bill gone through, it would have been about half a trillion shillings. Now it's about 700 trillion shillings. Where does 700 billion shillings? Where does 4.2 trillion come from?
You said 4.6.
Yeah, where does 4.6 trillion? Where does 4.6 trillion?
We'll come back to the facts. I mean, yeah.
Then again, it's actually quite unfair to accuse this government of never having done anything. They have only been in power for exactly 2 calendar years.
Kibaki gave us free education.
No, when Kibaki came in, the first 2 years of his tenure,
3 days, free education.
First 2 years of his tenure were very rocky. He actually started doing things. In fact, they were so rocky to the extent that in 2005 he lost a referendum. He was the most unpopular president then. So going by what Kibaki's first term was, yeah, you would imagine that he would never win a second term, that he would just be sent packing by a landslide. It was not a landslide. It was not a landslide. Whatever happened, it was not a landslide, but still come back in. Yeah. So it is. I think it's a bit premature to imagine that an incumbent who has another 3 years to go and who has just succeeded in stabilizing the country on the political front, and on the economic front, can be sent packing. Yeah, just 2 years of his 5-year term. It's a little premature.
Please don't allow him to sit here.
No. I will tell you about economic stability. Let's argue figures, not emotion.
Yes.
Let's argue figures.
Yes.
Inflation. At the point the president was taking over, President Ruto was taking over, inflation was 9.6%. Inflation now, core and headline inflation, is under 5%. Go look at the stats.
Because we don't have money.
Go look at the stats. It's under 5%.
Because there's no money.
No, but it's. I'm talking of core and headline inflation.
What's the difference between the two?
One is driven by food and petroleum prices, and the other one is driven by other factors. So both sets of inflation are within the central bank target, which is 5% plus or minus 2.5%. The price of fuel without subsidies. Kumbuka, during Kenyatta's time, there were subsidies, and those subsidies, by the way, were even misappropriated. Yeah, without subsidies.
Are those not as passions?
We are now. No.
The facts.
It's factual. It is factual.
Google.
It has been.
You cannot accuse
Auditor General confirmed a certain number of millions were stolen or misappropriated. First of all, from the Stabilization Fund, which was set up by an act of parliament in 1991 and later amended. That money went missing. That is why we had a fuel crisis in 2022. Then later on, because the administration at the time knew that money had been misappropriated, they went to parliament and purported to try and get money from the consolidated fund to subsidize fuel. Still, even with those subsidies, fuel was at an all-time high. At some point, it went missing. Fuel prices have come down without subsidies. Last year, into this year, for the first time in about 6 or 7 years, our grain harvest, moved from about 33,000 bags to 33 million bags to 44 million bags. Those are facts I'm talking about.
Good.
Yeah.
Good
Those are facts I'm talking about.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So let me finish. So when Wakili says nothing is happening, a lot is happening.
Let me tell you.
It's either they don't brag and thump their chest about it.
If there was a regime that would be over the moon if anything was happening, it is this.
Not exactly.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. We've been talking about
the question has not been posed, so don't answer questions that have not been posed.
I can read your mind.
Wakili.
But there's something that but there's something that we haven't finished.
Yes.
When it comes to development, it's talked about development and the fact that no toilets have been built. Do you know how much money go? You know how a budget is done.
Yeah.
You have a budget, and then the first charge on you have a budget. Then you collect revenues. They go into what is called the consolidated fund. The first charge on the consolidated fund is always towards debt service.
Yep.
There is local and external debt. Then you have to pay salaries and the recurrent expenditure, which is salaries and then pensions. Then you have a portion left over for development. From the time this administration took over, almost 90% of tax revenues collected are going towards external debt service, debt that was taken under the previous administration.
But wait.
It has crowded out money for in fact, it has almost crowded out money for recurrent expenditure.
Yes. I'm not uncomfortable.
It has also crowded out money for development.
Yes.
So it's not fair to say that these guys have done nothing. They are busy paying debt. They are saving us from debt default.
It's okay. Yeah? It's okay, Wakili. Now, Leonard, before I come to Dismas, let us just put things in perspective.
Yes.
Even President Uhuru Kenyatta, when he was leaving, our GDP was at 45 billion USD. When Kibaki was leaving. Yeah. Uhuru Kenyatta moved it from 45 billion USD to 101 billion USD. So there are certain things, at the macro level, that makes a lot of sense. You see, the reason why Kenyans voted for this regime has nothing to do with macroeconomics, giving us indicators of inflation. They don't make sense to Mora, they don't make sense to Anjiku. The reason why Kenyans went to the street is not because inflation was high. Kenyans went to the streets because the cost of living was unbearable. So if inflation has gone down and the cost of living has not gone down, it doesn't make sense. And I'm wondering, why is Dismas not telling you now, give us the practice and not the theory? As it may.
No, material facts.
Let's ask ourselves. Let's have an honest conversation. Yes, I agree that GDP under Kibaki was that much and GDP under Uhuru was this much. But relate that to debt, because any development, you always look at debt as a ratio of the GDP. When Kibaki was leaving, I think debt as a ratio of GDP was in the 40s towards 50%. The threshold, acceptable threshold for a country such as ours, of debt to GDP is a ratio of 60%.
Yep.
Beyond that, you get into problems. When Kenyatta took the previous the Kibaki administration did not go beyond that. In fact, it was well within.
Even the Uhuru administration did not.
The first term of the Uhuru administration, I'll give you a fact. The first term of the Uhuru administration, when it ended in 2017, debt to GDP was 57%.
Yes.
In the second term, when the deputy president, who was Ruto then, was excluded from government, debt to GDP.
But he was staying in government.
Debt to GDP rose to 68%. 8% above
63.
No. The figures are there. The figures are there. You just calculate it. Debt to GDP. Let's take for argument's sake.
Yes.
For academic sake.
Yes.
Let's take 63.
Yes.
Which is still higher than the threshold of 60%.
Yes. But there were mitigating factors, There were extraneous factors like COVID-19, the number of economic subsidies and economic measures that President Uhuru Kenyatta had to put in place to save businesses were out of this world.
I actually wrote an article, and it's there. We can Google it if you want. At the start of 2019, saying that we had exceeded our debt to GDP ratio, what is basically permitted, and that we were in danger of debt distress. That was in 2020, before COVID started. And when COVID started, I said there was every danger that the administration then would use COVID as a convenient crutch to prop up its failures and say that, and to excuse itself. And it happened. My articles are in the public.
Fair enough. The thing you're not helping us understand is to what extent was the current administration part and parcel of that. You cannot exonerate them. But be it as it may,
up to 2017. In 2018, the current administration was excluded.
But now, we don't have a problem with the current administration being excluded in the previous regime, but now you have a problem with the current deputy president expressing himself.
Professor. No. Let me
Yes. Before we move to the next point, yeah.
Yeah.
But
no. There are 3 items that we need to clear.
Yes.
Number 1, President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta successfully mismanaged the economy. It's not as if no. I'm giving facts. You see, now when I want to present my case, you can't
start with aspersions.
No. You want to confuse my thinking, and you are repeating 2022 talking points.
Yeah.
So he mismanaged the economy. So when President Ruto took over, they were essentially cleaning tables.
Absolutely.
They've actually been cleaning. The room was messy. The environment had been polluted. So even starting with the subsidies. So that is a point that has to be taken into active consideration. Number 2, during the President Kenyatta's administration, the deputy president was not given specific responsibilities. There were no roles. But under President Ruto's administration, Riggy has been told, you come from the mountain, cows, take care of coffee,
and milk,
take care of milk, take care of coffee, and we need to see fundamental reforms. He has not yet presented the scorecard. Instead, he's complaining that, wait a minute, there's a budget cut in my office. When Gen Z went to the streets and the finance bill was rejected, the government had to cut budgets across MDS. So they've cut, and he's complaining that part of the family members have now no resources to go countrywide. And then there's a point that Leonard was raising fundamental issues, and I saw you becoming a bit uncomfortable when you were discussing about recurrent expenditure and development expenditure.
Yeah.
That right now the priority is that to manage that public debt that President Kenyatta took with reckless abandon. And we can go to the detail. First of all, ask yourself, why did President Kenyatta not go for concessional lending? Why did he not go to IMF or World Bank or Africa Development Bank? Why did he go for commercial debts from China? And I know there are some people in this room who love China, but why did he go for these? It's because of governance issues. Number 2, we've got the matter of vendor-driven projects. Some of the resources that went to SGR, I don't know whether SGR is a viable project, because upon completion, international traders were told, you must use SGR, you are not going to use the road. Basics of economics say, give our consumer choices. If using the railway line is effective, they'll go for it. Then there's the little matter of vendor-driven procurement. You remember the medical scheme for governors? A particular county needs maybe a cancer treatment facility, but they're told to take a facility that they don't need. Some of the equipment are lying in hospitals and have not been used. People are not trained. So it's erroneous to say that the Jubilee administration has that the Kenya Kwanza administration has done nothing, when, as he stated, but there's been increased maize production in Kenya. And then the last point, in theory again, Kenyans vote on issues. They don't. In theory, Kenya is not, we are not anchored in tribalism, but we have tribal lords. You remember when a few elected leaders from Luo Nyanza said they're going to support the administration, everybody said, wait a minute, we are not in this business. But at the moment, Mr. Raila Odinga pronounced himself and he said, we are going to support the broad-based administration, everybody was aligned. In fact, at some stage when there were demonstrations in Nairobi, people in Kisumu said, wait a minute, we are now part of this administration, give Mbadi and the company 1 or 2 years before we come back to the streets.
But I'm sure they didn't stop you from going to Kisumu to lead demonstrations. So
there's something called the Stockholm Syndrome, that Kenyans are falling in love with their capitals. In theory, you can come and present an idea in Nairobi and you will win an election. If you want to confirm that that's voodoo thinking, go and ask PLO Lumumba, a very eloquent man, highly educated, learned. But when he went to campaign for a parliamentary seat, he was in a state of shock. And Fanya has alluded to it that if you come from Kisumu and you've got an issue,
Dismas, you're building around the bush. You're saying so many things and they're very theoretical.
No, I have to be around the bush.
And you're running away from the fact that
what is the facts?
The ills that you are blaming President Kenyatta for were essentially the ills that we should be blaming the same regime. The guys who are leading all these efforts by the current president were in the same government. They looted. When you talk about those medical equipment for hospitals, the key people who are involved in that are the same guys who are complaining right now.
Why are you ignoring my first point?
You cannot cherry pick.
My first point?
You cannot cherry pick, and just pick. Give it a broader view. What were the things that these guys were involved in?
I'm not cherry picking.
You are.
I've given you to in a manner which is
you're giving us the theory that you keep insisting.
No way. Yes. I've given the practical aspects. That, for instance, you may have socialized with the executive orders, which indicates on what the DP is supposed to be doing under the Kenya Kwanza administration. Did you see a similar order by President Kenyatta? No.
I would like to make a point. Sorry, before even Wakili,
we can't afford till we.
No. Let's exhaust this. I would like to make one point.
You guys have given us a lot of theories.
No. I would like to make one
point. And I think Wakili deserves, a right of reply.
I have been very patient.
Yes.
Number one,
strategic patience.
Every Kenyan knows, even the most foolish, that what this administration has borrowed in 2 years has never been borrowed within a similar period by any other administration. That's number one. Number two, every Kenyan knows, even the most foolish one, that the amount of taxation they are paying today, they have never paid since they were born. So we have an administration that borrows more, an administration that taxes more. Now, every other Kenyan knows that they've never paid higher fees for school, they've never paid higher fees for medical cover, because this chief Makelele is not working. And so these Kenyans are asking, first, the government has borrowed more in 2 years. Every fool knows
how
that.
How much have they borrowed? How much have they borrowed?
Listen,
in 2 years?
Number two.
No, can you give the actual figures? No, give the actual figures.
Let him finish. No, let him finish, then he'll give the figures.
No, he's making sweeping statements.
But
and also,
you had 5 minutes to make your submission. You made sweeping statements. Let him finish, then he'll give facts.
I'll refer you to the Daily Nation.
Yes.
On 26th of June 2023. And it says that, and there's an article here, it is actually written by Peter Mboro, so that you don't say I'm guessing my own things.
Yes.
And it says that the President Ruto borrowed 37.8% of the money he raised, compared to Uhuru, who borrowed 31.7% within a similar period. So wait a minute. No.
Could you please use central bank statistics?
This is coming from Kenya National Bureau of Statistics.
Use central bank statistics.
That's what
in the context of the forex fluctuations.
Dismas.
What was the exchange rate?
Dismas.
No. You said we must face facts.
Wait. We did not come here to discuss central bank statistics. If that was the agreement, we would be having those statistics here. Let him use the data that he has. If you doubt the data, you can go.
The data has to be credible.
And fact check. Yes.
I've given you the dates, I've given you the article, and he's quoting the government, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. So he cannot, the Nation newspaper is not a fool to allow you to quote Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. If you are lying, it won't be published. Now, he even gives you the page, go read. I've given you the dates and the times. Now, let's move forward.
Yes.
Every other Kenyan is not a fool because I have a child in high school and I know we are paying more. Call any Kenyan, they'll tell you they are paying more. Call any person who owns a business, they'll tell you they are paying more taxation.
Now this is the reality of inflation.
Yeah, so now, then somebody comes and gives you some funny figures and tells you that the economy has stabilized. By the way, let me tell you, there's nothing more painful than going right now to tell a Kenyan that we have done better in medical, we have done... Utapigwa bure, because Kenyans know what they are going through. This administration has been horrible, full stop. Now, having said that, they come and talk of fuel prices having gone down. I don't know what kind of madness goes on in the heights of Kenya Kwanza. You come and find fuel at 159. You take it to 221. And then you bring it to 179. And then you tell Kenyans, clap for me. We are not foolish. By the way, globally, go and look at the price per barrel when Kenya was selling at 159 and the price per barrel when we are selling at 179. In fact, the price per barrel now is lower than when we were selling at 159. Why? Because your parliament, Kenya Kwanza parliament, literally walked into parliament one day and decided that we are adding 8% on fuel that was not there before. And it was acrimonious. And they added that 8%, literally to make our lives horrible. So please don't come and tell Kenyans that you've brought down the cost of fuel. We know it was 159, you took it to 221, you brought it to 179, you're telling us to clap for you. Same thing with the dollar. We know the Kenya Kwanza administration. You come and find the dollar at 121, you take it to 160 at one point, and then you come and bring it to 127, 128, 129, and then you tell Kenyans to clap for you like they're foolish. They are the same Kenyans who buy those dollars and use them to import goods. So go and tell your Kenya Kwanza administration, Kenyans are not fools. The dollar was 121 when Uhuru left. You took it to 160. You bring it to 128 and then you tell us to clap for you. Fuel was 159. You take it to 221. You bring it to 179. You tell us to clap for you. And then you hide in funny figures and statistics and economics. Kenyans are not fools. They know the figures they work with. And they know what is going on in their lives.
Can I respond to Akili? Allow me.
No, you have to respond. Go ahead and respond.
Give us the right to reply.
Because
But I like the way Dismas remained quiet.
Yeah, give us the right to reply. You know, there is a term that was mooted by Americans. I think it's called voodoo economics.
Dismas popularizes it.
And no disrespect to Akili, but you're just spewing out voodoo economics to us because you tell us with one breath you tell us that Kenyans are intelligent and that they cannot be fooled. With the other breath, you now tell us that this government has the ability to manipulate fuel prices. It has the ability to manipulate foreign currency without even giving a background. Now, let me give you a background as to how fuel prices were increased by 18%.
Before you give,
no.
Let me just tell you, he did.
You gave him time.
I'm giving you time.
I'm giving you time.
Unfair.
But I'm being fair because what you're saying is that he says that the government manipulated. What he said is very simple. It went up and the government is telling people to celebrate it coming down, yet it doesn't want us to go back to where it was initially. But anyway, yes.
Let's have some background as to why the fuel, why fuel prices, why VAT. You know, fuel prices were zero rated at some point, meaning no VAT was levied on fuel. During the Kenyatta administration, because of that reckless borrowing and spending on vanity projects, the Kenyatta administration ran into financial headwinds. What happened? They went to IMF and World Bank, the Bretton Woods institutions.
In one vanity project.
They went to IMF and World Bank, the Bretton Woods institutions, and they were given conditions for support. One of the conditions they were given was that VAT had to be standard rated on fuel, had to move from zero rating to standard rating, which is 16%. That was a condition. So the Kenyatta administration went to Parliament and it was debated rigorously. But Kenyans rejected that because the repercussions at that time, the consequences of that move from 0% to 16%
was out of this world.
Yeah, it was out of this world. And a compromise was arrived at. 8%. In fact, the former Prime Minister rallied his ODM troops in Parliament. He was outside Parliament, but he rallied his troops to vote with the government at that time to raise it to 8%, and the agreement was in a couple of years to raise it to the full 16% standard rating. So it is disingenuous of Wakili here to come and say, oh, the Kenya Kwanza government came in and unilaterally raised fuel by 8%. It was part of an agreement that had been agreed on prior as a condition for disbursement of aid from the IMF.
Fair enough.
That point is met.
Fair enough.
That point is met.
Yes.
Then, fuel prices and forex were not within the remit of the Kenya Kwanza government. Why? Because the price of international crude rose on account of the war in Ukraine,
G2G.
on account of Middle East, the issues in the Middle East. Yeah. So the price, even before that was before G2G came in. That was that was at the time. No. That was at the point. That was a point when the open tender system was in play. G2G
was an innovative way of trying to mitigate the effects of.
Well, it was an innovative way to steal.
Although it didn't quite work. You know, I've hung around this fuel.
But you know, Leonard, let me just say this. What you're saying is very true. It's facts driven. It is making sense.
Yeah.
But what we are saying, this is politics. When Parliament was debating 16%, 8%, the then deputy president, who is now the current president, was out telling people, these people don't know what they're doing. They're increasing the price of fuel every day and night. When the deputy president then was rallying Kenyans against what President Uhuru Kenyatta said was the cause of the high prices of fuel, he was saying there's nothing like the war in Ukraine. They were out in the streets. And the basis upon which we are saying that this is a problem that they created for themselves is because of the promises they made. They made promises. When they were making promises, they didn't know that 8% was supposed to be negotiated in the next government to return it to 16. They knew, but they lied to Kenyans. And that is why we are saying, if they lied, they cannot keep lying and survive on their lies. They need to choose their battles.
I'm just circling back on...
no, that's what I'm saying. The points you're making are very valid, they're very true. A rational Kenyan understands them, but the Kenyan who voted for this regime voted knowing that this was a messiah who was going to do voodoo magic, according to Dismas, to ensure that the cost of living comes down. This was a messiah who was going to ensure, even in the presidential debate where he was on his own, he talked about the many taxes on fuel and told Yvonne that he was going to bring them down. They've never come down. And that is what the common Mwananchi is asking.
My 15 minutes of fame, let me also steal yours.
Still,
there's a metric that is understood. You're right, by the way, when you say Mwananchi will not understand these lofty terms. Headline inflation, core inflation, Mwananchi won't understand.
But Mwananchi remembers the promises politicians made.
There's a metric.
Yes.
There's a metric. And in Kenya, that metric is unga. That's why whenever somebody gets employment, down on the grassroots, they say nimepata unga. That's why when employment is jeopardized, what is the cost of unga? At the point Uhuru Kenyatta was living, unga was 250 shillings for a 2 kilogram packet, and it was not available in the supermarket. You couldn't get it anywhere. Right now, you can get unga for the 2 kilogram pack, depending on the brand. You can get it for under 100 shillings. Is that not a promise kept to Mwananchi? That is a metric that Mwananchi understands. Don't give him these lofty economic terms. Is that not something that Mwananchi can identify with?
Something that people don't like addressing on that unga thing. First, having unga at 250 was a horrible thing. Should never have happened.
True.
But nobody addresses the fact that there was a 3-year drought. And nobody addresses the fact that there has been rainfall. It's just God. Because otherwise, actually, unga should have even gone lower.
Then God loves the KK administration. I mean,
let me explain. Unga would have gone lower. Were it not for this horrible fertilizer that were given, that even God gave us excess rain to wash it from our farms. It was so bad that God has to give us floods to remove it from our farms. Let me tell you, you gave us gravel, which I think was good for affordable housing. They should have taken that to affordable housing for graveling, not for fertilizer. But the fact that God was kind enough to give us rain, because Aliona, I can't give you a bad president and then deny you rain. You will die completely. So he allowed us to have some rain, and that has really helped us as a country. And we continue to pray for more, that God continues to give us rain. Because as you discuss these unga prices, let me tell you, the biggest reason why the price of unga has gone down is rain. Fertilizer subsidy.
Because
subsidy. You get free fertilizer from Russia, and then you add Kenya Kwanza subsidy plus donkey shit and rubbish, stories, and then it becomes 2,500.
That is the story of a sophist. Why didn't Kenyatta do that?
Let me tell you.
What stopped Kenyatta from doing that?
On 1st of June, 2022,
yes,
we are on record. This mythical Inturi, 1st of June 2023, receiving 32,000 tons of fertilizer. Google on your phone from the Russian government for free. We have, okay, let's, where did it go to?
32,000 tons. Do you know how many tons we need? We need as a nation.
Go to?
Ladies and gentlemen, wherever you're watching us from, you can actually join this conversation. It is becoming heated. If you're an Arsenal fan, you're almost getting away with a draw, so you can stop watching that game and join this conversation because Man City is surviving. Coming back, let us come back to the Director General of Police and you know what has happened in the recent past. You know, a High Court judge pronounces himself, his security is withdrawn, the Chief Justice comes out, and then the whole situation is just becoming chaotic. And you ask yourself, what is it that is going on? Dismas, what is your helicopter view of the situation?
You know, I like the way you switched off from Kenya Kwanza with
it is still Kenya Kwanza
with the Fanya mambo, you know, making populist statements. Most of them are anchored on voodoo logic. Then you go to AFNO, and then all of a sudden you are at. But now, looking at this critical issue, there are several things which come to mind. Is there? And Fanya mambo, please don't allow me to quote the law because you said you don't want to discuss the law. But what gave the Deputy Inspector General of AP and then at that stage Acting Inspector General of the National Police Service the alacrity to become the Chief Content Officer instead of being the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the Republic of Kenya? What gave him the alacrity? What gave him capacity to ignore those summons, I think on more than 7 occasions? That is the first question. The second question, when did he experience his Damascus moment that is now going to respect court orders? And then the third question, if it was a common Kenyan, would he have this space to go to the court at his pleasure and to be treated with kid gloves? In my view, the behavior of the Deputy Inspector General of AP and Acting Inspector General of Police is unacceptable. And I'm hoping I'm hoping that parties, I don't know whether it's a conflict or this action, will actually go to the hilt, push it to the hilt. Because for a normal Mura, even before the court pronounces itself on anything, if you suspect that you'll be required to make attendance, you'll be on your way to that court. But for this gentleman has been told that this is my judgment, I'm having you bind for 6 months. However, I'm opening a window for you. If you come to my court and you offer your apologies, I will let you go. Which in my view I find unacceptable. But on the flip side, by the DIG going to court, he now confirms to all law enforcement officers that in future, if you are invited to make court attendance, you must show up. There's no exception. Number 2, he reminds all Kenyans, public servants of rank, that you must follow court orders. And as lawyers would say, that a court order or this kind of instruments are not invitations. They are orders and they must be respected. However, there was I don't know whether to call it an altercation in one of those proceedings where some lawyers did not accord the Auditor General the respect she deserves. I understand lawyers refer to that position as the titular head of the bar in Kenya. She was not treated very well. And in my view, any lawyer in Kenya ought to respect the Attorney General, irrespective of your position on that matter. And especially for Dorcas, who carries herself with a lot of respect, a lot of dignity. Even you like her hairstyle, you know her persona is very solid. So for any lawyer to try to belittle her presence, I find it unacceptable.
You can't carry yourself with respect and accept to work for this administration.
No, that is your view. Obviously, you're making a populist statements, of course, which are acceptable in the context of your political interest.
It's more emotional than that.
But Dorcas is a highly regarded lawyer. You speak to her peers, they tell you this lawyer. They actually tell their daughters and sons who are reading law that would like you to be like Dorcas. When you talk about our intellectual capacity, intellectual infrastructure is overwhelming. So you have to respect her, whether or not you like her perspectives, opinions, or employer.
Leonard.
Well, it was good that it is good that the former acting IG has purged his contempt of court process. I mean, he's purged the contempt by appearing and asking for forgiveness. But as Dismas has said, it need not have gotten to that point. Yeah, that was totally unnecessary. And that flexing between the judiciary and an arm of the part of the executive was totally unnecessary. Perhaps the judiciary also should do some introspection. Perhaps I'm not the expert. Kinuthia probably would have more to say about this than I would. But from where I sit, I think there are instances where the judiciary can make some accommodations towards the executive. In this case, for instance, he
defied 7 court orders.
Wait a minute. Accommodation here to mean?
Yeah.
That's what I was getting to before I was interrupted.
I
don't want to lose my flow of thought. In this case, for instance, whatever the IG needed to do in court could have been delegated to the functionaries that he has under him. They would have appeared in court with the exact same effect. It did not require a flexing of muscles to have to drag the IG into this. I mean, that is from where I sit from. I mean, I saw the way Kibaki used to engage with the former Chief Justice, then Gisheru, and there are issues that they would sort even behind the scenes. Housekeeping behind the tent. The issues that they would sort behind the tent, so that when it came to the public, the three arms of government would not appear to be in conflict. So these are issues that should have been managed behind the tent, so that the public does not see that there are wrangles within the arms of government. Because when you have those wrangles within the arms of government, they undermine institutions themselves. They undermine the judiciary. They undermine the executive. So matters should never have gotten to where they are. They were left a little too late, yes.
Yeah, actually, before Fanya comes in, you remember Chief Justice Maraga used to do news conferences almost on a regular basis, complaining that he's unable to access President Kenyatta. There's even a day he attended a national celebration, and he said he was not accorded the right protocols. He actually said that he would not attend another function. So maybe there's a need for the three heads of these arms to actually have a very solid conversation.
Yeah.
Because Murai is not interested in the dirty linen in public.
Yeah.
And in any event, as Leonard has said, when they start flexing their muscles, it's Murai who gets into trouble.
True, I agree.
Wakili, there's a thin line between interdependence and canoodling and probably working in the interest of the guys at the top and not Wanjiku. And in this case, many people are reading mischief, that for the IG to behave the way he behaved, there must have been some backing from the executive that supported that kind of behavior.
Let's first excuse the IG and forgive him. Maybe they brought him court orders, like the way you'd bring a wedding invitation card, and then maybe they never explained that these are orders. They thought just made it like it's an invitation for some dinner somewhere. Then he kept wondering why this invitation is coming so many times. And the advisors never really made it clear to him that these are orders and they must be followed. So I think I want to blame the advisors and exonerate him and say the advisors should have told him that this is an order, the way you give orders. It's not like a wedding invitation where you keep being invited and you're wondering, this judge might like me. Why is this judge liking me and inviting me all the time? Should have been made clear it's an order. And then contempt of court, as he was saying, you'll not find it in the penal code. You'll not find it in any law written that for contempt of court, you give 6 months. The way it's written for murder, you get this. It's at the discretion of the judge. It's a prerogative of the judge. The judge can decide 3 months. He can decide a week. He can decide, depending on how horribly you have behaved in the circumstances. But I think from where I sit, again, it doesn't augur well on Kenya Kwanza. But I'm happy because the Chief Justice in Kenya was looking for justice and she was crying for justice as a Chief Justice. And the happiest moment for me is seeing someone who brought this administration into place and used unjudicial language and said things like wild goose chase and all sorts of things to defend this administration and actually bring it into power, is now having a taste of her own medicine and realizing, oh my goodness, what did I bequeath unto Kenyans? An administration that takes away from us security when we make a judgment that is not in their favor. So it is a happy moment for us to see the Chief Justice crying for justice from a government that she brought into place and actually used very unjudicial.
And this is the second happy instance after the fight.
I'm very happy. I'm having happy moments because those people who created this animal are being beaten the worst by it. And it is actually very selective. It starts with the biggest supporters. Mount Kenya people, Uma Kabisa. Comes to the judiciary, Lima Kabisa. And I pray, and I'm happy because it is those people who, campaigned for this government, brought this government into power, did everything for it. Those are the ones who are being hit the most. And by the way, ironically, those people who hated this government, those people who chastised this government, did all sorts of things and said all sorts of horrible things, are now dearer to this government than any other person. And they've been blood closer and their opinion means much more. And I can tell you right now, if you ask with President William Ruto, he would tell you that the people of Nyanza are dearer to him than the people of Nyeri right here.
So are you afraid of mentioning ODM or what? When you say those
I'm
people...
not afraid of mentioning ODM.
Okay.
By the way, I stopped supporting them.
Okay.
This particular election, I voted for Raila Amolo Odinga. But the minute he joined Ruto, anything that goes with Kenya Kwanza, I leave in the morning. And that's why people are seeking sympathy with Riggy. I'm like, Riggy also brought this administration for us, so I'm not going to work with him. Anything that has got to do with Kenya Kwanza, if I woke up tomorrow and I found the bus that takes me to work is written Kenya Kwanza, I would never use a bus again. I would start using a bicycle.
Now, Kinuthia, anything around Kenya Kwanza, you are born.
Yes.
But the president last week was in Germany.
Yes.
Organizing jobs.
Yes.
Signed 2 different partnerships.
Yes.
And now Kenyans have an opportunity to go and make a living
Did you hear what?
In Germany. Let me finish. Isn't that good for so many Kenyans who are out here with elite education looking for opportunities within and without in a world that is now so much interconnected?
My friend, Germans are not giving you their white-collar jobs. Forget it. Germans are giving you their blue-collar jobs. I want you to underline that.
Skilled, semi-skilled.
Now, skilled, to them, a plumber is a skilled person. We need plumbers here, but there's no money to pay them here. So, I vote for you as a president to go and get me job opportunities in Germany. You should have fight for president in Germany. I heard the minister, Alfred Mutua, saying they are going to make a model house in Mombasa of how Arab houses look like in Qatar and Dubai.
So that we can be good house helps.
Train our girls to go and become house helps in those countries. And that guy is still a minister in this country.
One of the most solid.
That guy is still a minister in this country that we are going to take our girls. Most of them come back here in coffins. This administration should be thoroughly ashamed of themselves when they talk of creating opportunities for our people outside. God was not foolish when we were given birth here. We were born here and we took our nationality with our mother's milk. Give me a job here. God wanted me to have a job here. Create opportunities here. Bring investment. Let me tell you,
Dagoretti South folks are now watching you now. And they're thinking, I have a bachelor's of science in mechanical engineering, in structural engineering, whatever. There are no jobs in Kenya. There is this opportunity. They are thinking, instead of you helping them learn the German language, because that is one of the prerequisites.
I speak it very well.
Yes. You are busy here castigating the president.
I'll tell you why.
For the efforts that he has made.
I'll tell you why.
For many Kenyans in Suna East, where I come from, who are very happy, and they are looking at how they can seize that opportunity. But they are listening to you here, and you're not offering any alternative that makes sense.
Number one, you are selling your airport here.
Not airport. Let us talk about jobs.
Jobs. That $2 billion, if they were building an airport in Machakos, would have created very many jobs. From engineers, those engineers you're talking about, you need an engineer when you're building an airport. You need an architect when you're building an airport. You need all those skilled workers. You even need people who are good at mathematics to do the BQs. That $2 billion, that airport that you're about to give to some Indian with a red mark here, that airport you're about to give would have created very many jobs for Kenyans here. What Rwanda is doing is concentrating on bringing investment into the country to spur economic growth and create opportunities for Rwandese to work there. You saw what happened with cement factories when they went there. He came here and you know what happened to him. Akasumbuliwa, he ended up in Rwanda. What we are trying to say is before you go and get us jobs in Germany, now they're about to sell KICC next. Instead of seeing how KICC would have created job opportunities for Kenyans, you want to sell it to other people to come and benefit from it. I am telling you, before you create jobs for people in Germany, there is a lot that can be done to spur economic growth here. We wanted a president who will be bringing people to create jobs here, not take our children to other countries to go and live in other countries.
Fair enough.
And that language, by the way, because I speak it, ni ngumu sana. You know, you're having to learn a horrible language, and God had already given you Kiswahili and Kikuyu, which are good language.
Dismas, and I also learned there's a university in German, I think it's called Fanya University. It's an open online university. The tuition fee for a 4-year bachelor's degree program is 2,000 euros. The only requirement is you need to speak German because the language of instruction is German. And you know, you don't have to learn German now. Probably you have a generation that is coming, is probably in high school. That is an opportunity they can seize. But the question is this: are these two things mutually exclusive? Creating jobs here and looking for opportunities outside? And would you say that someone is wrong if they are doing one and behind the scene they're also doing the other? The fact that it is not pronounced that they are creating jobs here, does it make the opportunities in Germany wrong?
You know, addressing the matters of unemployment in Kenya requires lateral thinkers that you disrupt the status quo. Unfortunately, Wakili does not want to disrupt the status quo. So let me give an example. When Tom Mboya was working with then President Kennedy for the airlift for Kenyans to go and study in the US, people like Fanya mambo said, wait a minute, why do you want Kenyans to go and study outside? In fact, people from Britain who are unhappy with the status quo said that American education is inferior. Something that even scholars hold dear today. They actually believe that American education is inferior on account of propaganda. But the responsibility of our president is to create for you opportunities anywhere in the world. We are talking about globalization. These are imaginary barriers or fences. You have Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, US, UK. There are chapters in history books. It's about demand and supply. If you've got a skill in Kenya that is required in Germany, take it to Germany, you'll be paid for it. If you've got a skill required in the UK, go and work, you'll be paid for it. Now, using Fanya Mambo's philosophy and logic, it means no Kenyan should work for the UN, no Kenyan should work for a Chinese bank, no Kenyan should work anywhere. That is something we must discourage. And then number two, Professor, I know you are confusing me now because you're not listening to me. Number two, another important point. As end of last year, the money sent by Kenyans working in the diaspora was USD 4.2 billion, which was much higher than tea, coffee, and horticulture. Those are the three products that you say give us forex. But money sent in by diaspora was $4.2 billion US.
So you're saying it was netting as much more than coffee and tea and tourism?
But part of the reason, earlier on you were complaining about how the Kenyan shilling was performing against the US dollar. If you don't have this kind of forex, you'll be bleeding. You'll be in trouble. So in my view, let the president create opportunities for Kenyans anywhere in the world. Now, the minister responsible for labor, while he's a professor of communication, I think he's got a challenge in communication. Part of the reason why people going to the Middle East were getting into trouble is because they don't understand the cultural aspects in the Middle East. Before you go to any country, you must understand their culture. In my view, or rather my understanding, the reason why they want to put up the model house is for before you go to work in the Middle East, you understand the culture, the people you are going to relate with. It's the same thing that if you're going to Russia, you're going to China, you go to the embassy, there's a pre-departure, briefings. You are told these are the do's and don'ts. Like for instance, in the Middle East, you're not supposed to sit while you have crossed your leg for people to see the sole of your shoes, because they'll register offense. But if you just leave from Osocho and you go to the Middle East, you go sit, cross your legs, people are seeing the sole of your shoes, they'll wonder what is wrong with that person. It's even the same way that if somebody is coming to Kenya, they must understand the expectations of Kenyans. That is why, for instance, when I joined PR then, a firm called Kensel, I don't know whether you remember Kensel, they were unable to hit the ground running because they did not understand the Kenyan consumer. But Safaricom understood the Kenyan consumer, and now they become a multinational. The ideal situation would be to have all the jobs in Kenya. But you indicated, if there's a fella in Fanya Mambo's constituency, a bachelor's of science in botany, the parents have spent a fortune, including getting resources from government, and is unable to get there's no job opportunity for him in Kenya, and there's a job in Rwanda, there's a job in Angola. You cannot tell the gentleman that sit pretty in Nairobi until the cows come home while there are opportunities all over the world. Let everybody go with only one provision, that wherever you go, you must be assured that the government has got your back covered.
So, and 10 seconds and I come to 10 seconds.
Just 10 seconds. What I would like to say is, and I think this needs to be very clear, I am not saying that it's bad for Kenyans to work abroad or they should be given opportunities abroad. What I am saying is that the government should not make it that this is their primary way of looking for job opportunities for us and coming and promising us things that Germany comes and says that's untrue. Secondly, on the same breath is this. I have said what Mutua should have done is first build a house in that Qatar or Saudi Arabia. And then every potential person who is going to take a Kenyan girl to be taught that beating Kenyan girls and maiming them and sending them in a sanduku is not one of our cultural practices in this country. It is those people who need education in human rights. It's not our people who need education in their culture. Our human rights are being abused in that country because those people have a horrible record for human rights. So put up a house there, and nobody should get a Kenyan girl who has not gone through that course. In fact, we need to turn the tables around. Wanakuja wanafundishwa how to live with someone who is not from your country and how to be nice to somebody else's daughter. I am raising a daughter here. Alafu niambie nipelekee Mwarabu amuue. I wish there was a way I could find a flight to that country. We need to start telling these people the house is not supposed to be in Mombasa. The house is supposed to be there to teach those people human rights and to teach them that Africans are people and to teach them to respect our people and to teach them that our girls are human and they feel pain when they are tortured and they feel pain when they are mistreated and they feel bad when they are made to sleep on the floor. I am running a mediation firm here. The number of cases I'm handling about girls who've gone to Saudi and come back because of how horrible those human beings are. And I say it without fear. We need to get to a point where nobody will ever be given our girl until we are sure they have been taught about human rights and the protection of the dignity of our people. Those are the people who need the house, not us.
And I can't agree more. The right to life is a non-derogable right. Mm-hmm. Leonard?
Yeah, I want to circle back to correct some patent or falsehoods that have been spoken here.
About employment?
No, I'll come to that.
Professor, give him time.
Yeah, just give me time. So one of those falsehoods is that the elections of 2022 were an endowment of the Chief Justice on the people of Kenya. That is not true. Kenyans woke up, voted, went through a process, and the candidate who eventually became president got 50% plus one vote. Yeah, and he was then duly sworn in as president. The second impression I want to correct is that the election petition of 2022, the presidential election petition of 2022 was decided by caprice, the caprice of the 7 judges of the Supreme Court. That is not true. That election was decided on the strength of evidence adduced or lack thereof. There was a truckload of evidence that was taken to the Supreme Court by the petitioners, and it turned out to be precisely what the judges described. Hot air, though nothing ever came of it. Truckload of evidence, amongst other star-studded witnesses, like former anti-corruption head, Githongo, who came up and with forgeries of all manner of sorts, So it's not fair to say that it's actually an insult to the intelligence of Kenyans to say that the elections the presidential elections were endowed. They were forced on Kenyans by the Supreme Court. That's not true. Now to your point about
to your point. To your point. Let me just say something. An election is supposed to be free, fair, transparent, and verifiable.
Absolutely.
So whatever the Supreme Court did, whatever you are saying, there are a lot of Kenyans outside there who say, for as long as that election cannot be verified, it is your opinion against their opinion, and it doesn't matter what whoever thinks. There are people who believe that justice was not served, even with the truckloads. There are people who believe justice was served. But be it as it may, the Supreme Court gave us a ruling for all of us, not for Azimio, not for Kenya Kwanza. It is for Kenyans. And that is where we are.
Yeah, elections in multiple jurisdictions, including the US, are always contentious issues. Yeah, the
point I'm making is verifiability. But
who determines?
But you can move on.
No. Before you move on, because this is important.
Because the Supreme Court
there are multiple.
Talked about
there are multiple
evidence abused in
There are
court.
multiple agencies. There were multiple agencies who declared.
The point. My point is very simple.
No.
You cannot rubbish people who question.
I'm addressing your point.
You cannot rubbish people who question. You can have your view,
yes,
but also respect their view. There are people who, for as long as they cannot verify,
their views,
without those evidence
their views,
even the language that the Supreme Court used, the wild goose chase, hot air.
But by the way, I've looked at that language, by the way, and
is it even judicial language?
There are other places. There are other places.
If you look at the submissions and the judgments, those are big disparity in the way they conducted themselves before and the way they conducted themselves when they were giving the ruling.
You should know why.
Let us stick to the jobs. Let us stick to the jobs. Whoever won the election, the Supreme Court already made a determination.
No, Professor, you've been
I'm not making sweeping statements.
And Professor has been unfair.
No. I'm not being unfair. I think you are resurrecting something.
No.
You are resurrecting something that is indeterminate.
I'm not resurrecting. I mean, I'm just addressing basically what you're saying.
Yes. But you are addressing it with finality, which I'm disputing. Yours is not final. Is an opinion like his.
We have institutions that address the issue with finality.
But you are
not that institution.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Because
let him hold his opinion. Don't pass yours on this show
it remains,
like it remains
an opinion.
Yes.
But the fact remains that the institutions mandated to address electoral petitions did it, and they came up. And we moved on. And they did it on the basis of evidence adduced, not on the basis of your feelings.
Yes.
Or his feelings.
Yes.
You'll always have your feelings, and they will form your opinion.
Yes.
Right or wrong?
Yes.
But wrong.
They form my opinion, just like you form your opinion.
Wrong on the basis of the evidence that was adduced by the Supreme Court.
The only thing that should be said is that when justice is served by the court, both the petitioner and the defendant should never feel as though the court was not fair to them.
Thank you.
What usually happens is when you win a fight in court, you must never feel as if the judiciary was condescending on you. And this is where our judiciary failed. They showed condescending attitude and language towards one party. What they should have done is said that based on the evidence adduced, we find that we are determining in this particular way. But you cannot come laughing at someone and telling, hey, stupid evidence. That is not acceptable.
Thank you.
What the judges merely did was to describe the evidence as nothing more than
actually,
what some Kenyans feel is that was condescending for an election that no one can verify whether it was free.
Let me say this. No. Before we move on, let me say this.
We are finished. It's 9.
No.
Yes.
Let me say this.
I have to go.
You only finish when it's my turn speaking.
That's why you're giving me your time.
You only finish when it's my turn to speak. How come?
It's okay like that.
There was that whole Jose Camargo thing, and let me say why the Supreme Court got very angry, because that whole Jose Camargo thing should have actually led to censure of the advocates who presented that evidence, because that was forgery. That was forgery. Okay, but let me leave it at that. Let's move on now. Point made. Let's move on. About this labor issue, about us exporting our labor, it's the exigencies of the times. We don't have money for development because it was squandered by the last administration. So we can't put up the factories that we need to put up. Just
can
yet.
renovate State House.
Let me finish. You had your turn. I didn't interrupt. I sat and listened. Let me finish. So we don't have money to put up factories at the moment. We don't have money to do the things that we need to do, which is not to say they will never be done. They will be done. But what is expedient at this particular moment, when we have a whole lot of jobless people, what is expedient is to fit them in places where they can earn a living, where they can use their money, where they can send back money home to build the country until we get to a point where we've stabilized enough, we've paid down our national debt, and we have we are then able to build the factories and do the development agenda that we are meant to. We have 4 million Kenyans out there in the diaspora that were never taken to the diaspora by the government. Most of these fellows made it out there on their own. And the danger with that is that you get abused. Do you know we have Filipinos who work in the Middle East, in virtually all those countries of the Middle East, but they are never mistreated. Do you know why they're never mistreated? Because they are government-sanctioned employees. I mean, government-sanctioned workers who've gone to the Middle East with the blessings of their governments, with the backing of their governments. A lot of people who end up in the Middle East just sneak in plane loads. Even if you try and stop them today, they will still find a way of sneaking either through Dubai or through some other place, and again, then getting mistreated. So this, I think, is a good initiative by the government to formalize a lot of these arrangements that have been going on for years and that have been to the detriment of workers. It's a good arrangement. Wakili talked of blue collar jobs. And blue collar jobs are not bad in themselves. I mean, I know a country like Turkey sent a lot of blue collar employees to Germany in the 80s and part of the 90s. These are the fellows who came back with the technology, even at rudimentary levels, like bricklaying, like electrical work, like plumbing, came back with the same technology and helped to build the Turkish economy to the point that it's now, I think, the top 15 economies of the world. These are guys who went to Germany as blue-collar employees and they've come back. Kenyans are like that. Kenyans are not like Nigerians or Congolese who will abandon their countries, then go and settle in other countries and forget about their motherland. Kenyans are very loyal to the motherland. Send them out there, you can be sure more than 90% of them will either send money back home or figure out a way of investing back home for their eventual return.
And in any event,
it's a very good place to end the show. Kenyans are very, very dynamic, agile, and when they go outside there, they come back and invest at home. But one thing we have to remind ourselves, the reason why Kenyans sneak, unlike the Filipinos, is because there are no opportunities in this country. For as long as there won't be opportunities in this country, things will not work out for people who sneak or people who are supported to go to other countries by the government. The ultimate function of a functioning government is to create opportunities within the countries. It is not wrong. It is not wrong to send people in other countries, but our business as Kenyans is to make Kenya a better place. It is not hard to get those companies where Kenyans are going to be employed to come and invest in this country because there are opportunities in this country. Thank you for being with us for the last 90 minutes. If you're an Arsenal fan, let us go outside there and celebrate because we've been robbed of the 3 points, but 1 point is better than no point at all. Until we see you next time on Sunday around this time. See you then.
My daughter is